without further ado, thank you very much for coming. I'm glad that you all want to know what's on your ballot before you go and vote. So I've asked two people to join us at this hour, and that is Representative Vikki Goodwin, who is in our Texas legislature, and she will be talking about the 10 constitutional amendments, and Jessica Foreman, who is with the League of Women Voters, who will be talking about the Austin rather wordy proposition. So maybe we can understand what the proposition says. I guess I should also let you know that when constitutional amendments come to the ballot, they have been approved by 2/3 of the House and 2/3 of the Senate. So there is some agreement that these things are necessary. Why some of them are necessary, I have no earthly idea. However, hopefully we'll find out. So I'm going to turn it over to Representative Goodwin.
Good afternoon. Can y'all see me, or I can stand up? I'm really amazed at the turnout to hear about the constitutional amendments, but I'm very happy to see the interest. We were actually out just this morning at 2 apartment complexes dropping off a smaller version of the 10 propositions that will be on the ballot, with a little letter explaining how people can look up to make sure that they are registered to vote. We also included a card just in case they weren't, because there is often turnover at apartments. And the really nice thing about it was that 2 of the buildings had every door on the first level. Not too much stair climbing. So it was great. We got through delivering 500 of them in an hour and a half with all the volunteers. So we went very quickly. Just trying to get as many people aware of what's going on with the constitutional amendment. Couldn't make a vote this time. Odd number of years is hard to get people to show up to vote because, 10 constitutional amendments, it just doesn't have quite the excitement as president. So that's what we've been doing. I will go through, this is the Reader's Digest version, very short and sweet, and pictures on the opposite side. This is the House Research Organization version. It is 25 pages. So I brought it along with me in case anybody has some questions. There have been a few questions at prior events where I've talked about these, and so I think I've covered most of the questions, but you never know when something new will pop up.
And can I interject that we will have the website to that PDF when we put this on our website, when we put the video on the website. We'll have both links to the League of Women Voters working for us.
Okay, great. So I will also give you a little bit of background about what I heard when I was on the House floor as far as the representatives who brought these before us and why they did. So that kind of gives you a little insight into why these are on the ballot. So number 1, permits a person to hold more than one office. So basically in the really small cities, this is where it's pertinent. It's not pertinent here in Travis County, but say along the border, I believe the representative who brought this up has some very small cities in his district that just can't find municipal judges. And so this allows one municipal judge from a city, say like Gerald, and a neighboring city, say Florence, very small cities that maybe don't have the personnel to cover both. It allows that one elected official to work in both cities. So that's what Proposition 1 is about. Proposition 2 allows the Texas Water Development Board to sell bonds. This is for the representative who spoke about this on the House floor was Mary Gonzalez from El Paso. In a state with the economy that we have, we still have neighborhoods in some parts of the state that are colonias that have no running water, they don't have sewer, and so that's what this proposition is about, to give more money to the Texas Water Development Board so that they can help the smaller areas with their infrastructure. So they actually started this in 1989. It ran out of money in about 2007, so they put some more money in there for the projects, and we're at that point again where there's not any bond money left. And so this just gives up to $200 million for them for those projects. Feel free to ask any questions along the way.
How many people is that serve?
I believe the number I saw was somewhere around 400,000. So it's a, yes.
They can't spend the money for anything else?
That's my question.
No, it's supposed to be just for water projects, for water or sewer.
Balance the budget?
No.
Okay.
I'm surprised if it's bonds. It seems like it would get repaid and the money would more or less be perpetual. I'm surprised that this is the third time they're having to add to the bucket. I'm confused.
Well, they have used up the bond money, and those projects were done and paid off. And so it's not it's giving the Water Development Board more money for new bonds. Right. Yes.
Yes. So for the water bonds, do we know how many communities do not have water and sewer in Texas?
Okay.
And then I have one. And I also wonder if the municipal judges thing is limited up to communities of a certain size. What is the criteria?
Well, it is for economically distressed areas.
Is that one or two?
And you mean which proposition?
Or amendment 2?
Proposition 2 is for the economically distressed areas. And let me see if it says how many. I don't think it talks about how many areas there are. It just says that it will allow up to $200 million. And
I think she meant the second one was for Prop 1. How many offices can one person hold?
Well, no, that really wasn't my question. I was just curious, what size municipality? So is it 100,000, is it 200,000 that judges can have multiple roles, or is there some other criteria?
I don't know that it specifies.
So Austin could do it too?
Let's see. I don't believe it has a cap on the size of the city that it pertains to.
Just curious, thank you.
Yes.
Yes, on Prop 1, does a municipal judge get a pension?
I believe so.
Okay, so if a municipal judge held judgeships in 2 different places, would that constitute 2 jobs that he was getting pension for, he or she?
That's a good question. However, your pension typically is based on your pay. So if you're doing part-time in 2 different places, you probably have a pay that's equivalent to 1. So it would still be a pension equivalent to 1 full-time. Would be my assumption.
Regarding the Prop 2 and the bond, why is this a constitutional amendment versus a bond amendment? What issue?
Probably because we're putting money into the Water Development Board as opposed to a municipality or something like that.
Aren't there statewide bonds that get passed? I worked at a state school and that was redesigned due to a statewide bond.
You know, I would have to assume that the Water Development Board doesn't have the authority to issue bonds without a constitutional amendment. And that's
That's what you're thinking, but not what you know?
yeah. Correct.
Well, these are, having just moved back from a rural, poor county, they don't have the capability. I mean, they're not going to be giving their judges very much, if anything. I mean, and the same thing, they don't have the credit or the structure to get bonds. So it's not like Austin's going to do it.
I understand about that for the water bond. I'm just wondering why is a constitutional amendment a better option versus a vote when needed?
So what we can do is do a little bit of research and put it up on our website, let you know. How's that?
And I have not looked at this section of the League of Women Voters website yet.
They don't have any.
They don't have anything up yet.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. So number 3 allows the legislature to develop a temporary property tax exemption. So this deals with like a Hurricane Harvey type situation where your school district, for example, might give tax exemptions temporarily for those homes that people can't live in right now because they need to be rebuilt. And so it just allows, apparently, some of those entities were opting not to give the tax exemptions, and this just says that they would have to in the case of, homes being destroyed. Number 4 bans the creation of a state income tax, and this is the one that I think the most publicity has been out there on social media and so forth, and a lot of incorrect information, so you're not voting on an income tax either way. Whether you vote yes or no does not bring about an income tax. Basically, if you vote yes, it's saying that we can never have an income tax, but there's a couple of concerning things about voting yes for this. The first is that the wording is for individuals, and we've seen with Citizens United how the wording of individuals was applied to corporations. And should the wording later be used for corporations, saying that they can't have an income tax, that could do away potentially with the franchise tax, which is what brings in money revenue for our schools and for transportation and for healthcare. So that's very concerning that we would lose that revenue source as a result of voting yes on this. The other is that in the 80s, Lieutenant Governor Bob Bullock put in the Constitution some language that is, in my opinion, very helpful. If we were to ever pass an income tax, 2/3 of the revenue would go to offset property tax, and the other 1/3 would go towards public education. So if you vote yes on this, it would take out that wording, and it would potentially give a way for corporations to get out of the franchise tax. So those are a couple of things that you probably may not hear on certain sites that are advocating for you to vote for it to ban an income tax forever. And there's really not any reason to do that because we can't have an income tax now unless y'all vote for it, which is not what we're doing right now. So is that clear? All right. Proposition 5 allows our sporting goods tax to go to our state parks and to our state historical sites. A lot of people have asked me about this one. Isn't that already the case? And it is to some degree. The state has not allocated 100% of the sporting goods sales tax to the parks and historic sites, and so that's what the goal of this proposition is. And right now, our state parks are about $800 million in deferred maintenance. Our historic sites are about $40 million in deferred maintenance. So this will be helpful to bring those parks up to standard. Did you have a question?
No, but I have a statement. I'm on the Texas State Parks Board, and this is very important. You vote yes on this. Just before this election 2 years ago, they were going to shut down 20 state parks because of lack of funds. And the legislature gave them some funds to keep those 20 open, but they're still terribly, some of them parks are still closed because of flooding, and our McKinney State Park right here in Austin still doesn't have its visitor center open. So I'm encouraging you to tell all your friends on the 5th, which is when our election is, vote 5 plus on 5. Thank you.
Sure. So actually the Sierra Club had a meeting recently, and they had me come and speak about 3 of the propositions, and that's one that they are obviously advocating for. And I know that they're going to be doing some block walking just before the election to get the word out to vote for that as well. So there's a lot of support behind that.
Does some of that money also go to support wildlife management and hunting and trapping?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Did you have a question on it?
Yeah, do we do this for any other kinds of needs? For example, like a portion of taxes collected from books goes to support public libraries, or a portion of taxes from home remodeling stores like Home Depot goes to support affordable housing, things I might care about.
Well, Not so much those things, but there is also a Texas emissions reduction program, which are some of the oil and gas money goes into that fund. Same situation, it's not, we have over $1 billion in that fund, the TURP fund, but it's not getting appropriated every year. And so we passed a bill this time, and it doesn't have to go through the constitutional amendment process, but it became law, saying that that money, rather than going into the general fund, is going to be in a separate fund that can be appropriated every year for emissions reduction.
That also comes from sales tax?
No, it's the oil and gas tax.
Is there anything that comes from sales tax that's dedicated in that way?
Not that I am aware of.
So only this kind of thing is taken out of the general sales tax revenue and dedicated to a specific
This is not
purpose?
general.
Right, just for sporting goods though.
How much money is that? Your estimate?
That's a good question. I think I came across that at one point, but I don't recall. Let me see if we can find it and follow up with you. I don't think it has it in this, but let me glance at it real quick.
And I can tell you that some of us have state-of-the-art license plates, for example, or parks license plates, and it's an extra cost for those. That money is supposed to be dedicated to the entity. In fact, it goes into the general fund. So there has been a call to get rid of all of these extra license plates because the money isn't going to where it's supposed to go. And if you listen to Senator Watson, he's on the Senate floor every year saying, let's have truth in advertising, right? So why are you looking at it?
Yeah, sorry, it doesn't have the amount that it brings in. I think it varies year to year. I did see a graph somewhere, so I know that number's out there. I just don't recall.
Question.
Yeah. Yes.
This is the state taking the state portion of the sales tax and using it for a state function. Your libraries and things like that come out of a portion of the sales tax that goes to your locality. So those things are funded in the same kind of mechanism. It's just the entity that is responsible for them that receives those funds uses them.
Well said. Thank you. Appreciate it.
And that's a really good point. I'm glad you mentioned it. But isn't it the case that at the city level, that would be a decision made by the city council and or city manager after collecting all the sales tax, deciding how each of the necessary functions can be funded out of that sales tax, how to apportion the money, whereas in this case, the legislature would be taken out of that role, right, and the money would go directly from the sporting goods sales portion of the sales tax into the parks. Am I right, or am I misunderstanding?
So yeah, I mean, the sales tax from sporting goods would go directly to Texas Parks and Wildlife.
The state.
Or yes.
The state portion.
The state portion, yes.
Like fishing and hunting licenses, are those taxes like this, or what happens to that money?
Yes.
Those, I believe, go to parks as well.
Or
They
not?
go to those functions.
Yeah.
They go to the fishing function, they go to the hunting function. Whatever license you bought, it
Right.
goes to support that function. It doesn't go to save trees or
100%.
Or balance the budget?
Okay, say one more question, and then we move on.
When I worked for the state, I worked with both supplemental and supplantable funds. And supplantable funds are funds that can go in the top and then be pulled out from the bottom. So like if money goes into, let's say, education, let's say you put $10 million in education from the lottery, then you take 10 millions out from another source and move it around.
From
another
To another source. Money that goes in the top. And so my question, and supplemental funds mean the money that comes from this money cannot be replaced and cannot move out. Yeah, it's addition to the existing funds. Do you know the status of the type of funds we're talking about? So let's say all this money goes to parks and wildlife, that's fine. will monies therefore then be removed that
From the
were
budget.
from the budget that were acquired from another source?
So my understanding is that
It's
not
not supposed to.
necessarily. Not necessarily. I mean, it depends if we have a regular budget for parks and wildlife. I don't know that the state's going to say, we're not giving you any money except for what comes from the sporting goods sales tax. Is that what you're saying?
Well, let's say the sales tax generates $10 million and the existing budget is for $100 million. When they take the $10 million, will they then remove $10 million and
And put it back in the general fund or
for
something?
a general fund, and then so the budget will still continue to be $100 million?
Right, that's a very good question, and I don't know the answer to that. But I can look it up and share it with Joanne.
Because
Thank you.
that's the thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
We voted on this in 95 or 98, and I think the money went to the rainy day fund, which we had to beef up so we could get bonds for the state, because we didn't have enough liquidity to get Class A bonds. I mean, we didn't have very good credit rating, so they put money, as I understand from public radio, into rainy day fund that was supposed to go to Parks and Wildlife, and they didn't replace it in the state budget.
Okay. All right, Proposition 6 is for cancer research. So going to the Cancer Prevention and Research Institute, I apologize, my flyer says 3 million and 6 million, it should be billion. So it's kind of a big mistake, but we didn't catch it before it got printed. So it's just boosting the amount of money in that fund so that our cancer research organizations can continue to do their work. Yes?
Well, I doubt anybody would be against cancer research, but there has been tremendous scandal with that particular organization. Has that all been cleaned up? Do we know for sure?
So I have been asked that question, and I have my staff looking into it to see what we can find out. I don't know, to be perfectly honest. I've just heard the same thing a few days ago, so we'll look into it.
Why only cancer? I mean, there are many diseases that are new kinds.
So to answer your question, my understanding about that commission was that the board was dissolved and regrouped under different management. And so it was cleaned up. But it would be interesting to follow up.
Yeah, I'll see what I can find out, and I will let you know. All right, number 7 allows increased distributions from the Texas General Land Office to the available school fund. Distributions would be capped at $600 million per year rather than $300 million. Yes.
Okay, I think the available school fund is used to pay per capita payments, and it used to be that a transfer was made to the textbook fund. Since most schools aren't even using textbooks as far as my grandchildren tell me.
So instructional materials now. They've used the word instructional materials since some of them are online.
Okay, so did they need twice as much in instructional?
Technology.
And are they increasing the per capita? What are they going to do with this extra money?
So we have had an increase in the number of students in the state, so that and that number hasn't been boosted in a while, and the amount of assets, I believe, are something like $44 billion, and so it's not even 1% of the assets that they're raising it up to.
Yes, but that fell like 50% just 10 years ago. So.
From what I hear, the schools are using that for instructional materials and technology. I know a lot of schools are getting much more high-tech with their ability to show movies in the gym, for example. I was at Westwood High School yesterday, and they had a very nice screen that they pulled down so that we could show a video about the new voting machines. Yeah. So I know that they are using the high-tech in the schools.
Right, and we know for sure that this money is going to be transferred from the available school fund to the textbook fund so they can use that for technology. Is that right?
Yes. Right, instructional materials and technology. Okay, Number 8, authorizes the Texas Water Development Board to draw $1.7 billion from the state's rainy day fund. Again, as a result of Hurricane Harvey, we've seen that both FEMA and the state are very slow at funding projects and allowing people to rebuild their homes and businesses. And so this is something that will help with Hurricane Harvey and other flood issues throughout the state. In my district in particular, Onion Creek has seen 2 floods. This is more for, again, economically distressed or lower income areas first. However, it could potentially go to projects in other areas if they have enough funding. And I did want to point out that it's for not just the structural, but like levees, dikes, and dams, but also for non-structural education, mitigation plans, and engineering studies. Yes?
Do you see that at any point there will be a planned retreat so that people are paid to move from zones that are more and more calculated or whatever to be flood zones? It seems to be.
You mean like a buyout to get people out of flood
Right,
areas?
so they call that a managed retreat, to manage how you move people away from.
I don't know about on the coast. I would imagine they do. I know that in Onion Creek, for example, the city of Austin has done a buyout program and they've bought over 100 homes and their plan has them buying out over 200 homes. It's a very unfavorable for that neighborhood. They don't want to sell their homes and move out necessarily. They would like to see some alternatives, maybe digging out the creeks, cleaning that up, coming up with some ideas for how to move the water in a rainstorm, but those are very expensive, and the engineering study showed that we're not always sure exactly where the rain's going to fall, and without knowing that, it's hard to know where to put the walls to divert the water. So the city of Austin, through all of their research and engineering studies, said the buyout's really the best, most effective use of your money to make sure that you don't have more flooding in that neighborhood.
This is for an infrastructure plan. This means that you're building stuff. That doesn't mean you're buying out properties and moving them.
Correct. Correct. So that's why Onion Creek would have been hopeful if they were not a higher income area.
Right, but you were talking about this could be down along the coast for those properties, right? Proposition 8, right?
Right, down along the coast, they might be looking at dikes, at levees, at walls.
Well, flood control project is a building, it is not moving properties away from the
the way it's worded, it could be non-structural as well. So I guess it just depends on what the Water Development Board determines is the best way to handle a flood issue.
Like the Shoal Creek, that was, houses about to slide off into the creek, is that part of this as well?
Question is whether Shoal Creek is part of this as well.
They would have to submit a plan to the Texas Water Development Board, and again, the Water Development Board is looking at areas that are more economically distressed for their bonds, because Shoal Creek would probably be able to get help from the city of Austin or Travis County.
20 million.
Okay, we're going to go on the next one because we have a bunch to do yet.
Okay, number 9, authorizes the legislature to exempt precious metals held in a precious metal depository from property taxes. So this one is a really odd one. I put an X on it just because we don't currently tax that. It's like if you had gold in a depository and they were saying the value of that is X dollars and we're going to collect an ad valorem tax, like a property tax on it. From my understanding, we don't do that currently. I believe there is one depository in Texas. I've heard that there's going to be another one up in Leander. I know John Busey is probably in favor of this, thinking that it might help with job creation in his district. Like I said, right now we don't have that tax, so we're saying let's give an exemption to a tax that we don't currently have. My personal opinion is, why create an exemption for something that we don't have? Yes.
Thank you. I'm just curious why this wouldn't qualify under existing banking rules. You're
Right.
essentially holding money for somebody. It's
Right.
not technically
You don't tax their
property.
bank account. That's, again, I don't know if someone down the road might decide that we're going to tax it because it's different than dollars. You know, like I said, we don't currently have that tax on precious metals, so, yes.
I think that if you hold gold and then sell gold and make a profit, I think under federal income tax, federal taxes, that you do have to pay taxes on it and report it. So I think this is just so the state is clarifying about state taxes, I think.
Okay. Possibly so. I mean, it says if you're holding it and it's income producing, so maybe that's, you can interpret that as when you sell it, you're producing income at that point in time. So, anyway, that's my take on number 9. And number 10, it just seems really strange that we have to put this in our Constitution. But who would be against it, allowing the service dogs to go with their handler when they retire?
My guess is it's because it's a federal piece of property. If it was a federal piece of
Or
property.
state property.
State property, yeah, but it's not a person, piece of personal property, so therefore.
Well, they used to say dogs.
But every once in a while, we use amendments that don't seem to make a whole lot of sense of why, but it's more.
So that you get to the end and you get to feel good.
You might want to clarify the wording because as written on the Prop 10 here, it's not clear whether you're talking about when the dog retires or when the handler
Good point. I think it's for the dog. All right.
Okay, so the next, two more questions, just two more, one over here and one over there.
Was there a recent law that created a Texas bullion depository, and is that related to Proposition 9?
Was there a recent law?
Well, apparently there was. I don't know anything about it except this book by Lawrence Wright. He says a recent law would create the Texas Bullion Depository, the first state-level facility of its kind in the nation. Is that related to this Proposition 9?
Yes, but as far as I know, that depository doesn't have a tax on the metals that are being held there.
Does not have one, and this would just ensure that no taxes ever apply to them.
Right.
And your recommendation is to vote against it?
And that's privately owned, isn't it?
I don't
I
know.
don't think it's a state thing.
I have to Google it, but yeah.
Mainly because it's another exemption, and I just feel like, why exempt this over something, we have a lot of exemptions, and we always talk about maybe we should look at those exemptions, and if we didn't have exemptions, everybody would be paying their fair share. So that's the main thing why I put an X on it. It's another exemption.
So, one more question, then we've got to move on.
Yeah, we both had the same question. Is number 10 limited to police service dogs, or is it other types of service dogs?
Well, the wording says police, so I assume just.
And is that broadly defined as your law enforcement? Like customs and, yeah, I'm looking at it. Okay, thank you.
Customs is federal.
But it's not other service animals that other law enforcement.
Yes, so other law enforcement.
It says other law enforcement animals.
It's law enforcement animals.
So let's move over quickly to the League of Women Voters and the Austin ones. And then, so Dana DeBeauvoir is here. And what she is going to talk about, probably about 10 after 3, is what to expect when you get to the polls. So here we have information on what's on the ballot, but the poll is going to look different when you walk in. And if you have not experienced this yet or not seen it yet, I think it's important that we do that so that you're not absolutely shocked when you walk in and everything is different. So, Jessica.
Well, this should go fast. I know none of you have an opinion on the propositions. My name is Jessica Foreman. and I'm the Director of Advocacy for the League of Women Voters Austin area. We are co-sponsoring this event with Common Cause. For those of you who are not, those of you who are not familiar with us, we're a nonpartisan political organization that works on voter registration, voter education, civic education. And I want to offer you a disclaimer right here. I am the advocacy director, but I am not a tax attorney. I am not a land use attorney, and you will be able to stump me on this, okay? These propositions are very in the weeds, all right? So I'm just trying to be an informed voter like you, so note that there will be some questions I probably won't be able to answer. First off, thank you for being here. As the representative expressed, these constitutional and local elections, there's not a lot of people that vote in them, and there's even fewer who want to dig down into the topics to figure out what's going on. So you guys are doing a great job at making our democracy work by being here. Also on that note, the League is not taking a side on these propositions, so I'm going to be as neutral as possible, and I will be having quotes from both proponents and opponents of both propositions. So the first one, the City of Austin has Prop A and Prop B, and before we get into the specifics, there is an overarching theme I want you to think about, which is who should be making decisions in the city. We have a couple of options, city council and bring it to a vote. And there are different things we do for both of this. For example, the city auditor's salary, we don't vote on that, right? That goes to the city council and they decide how to set that salaries. But if the city wants $1 billion in transportation bonds, that is required by law to go for a vote. So we have some things that already do go for a vote and some things that the council decides. These propositions are asking where should that line be? What decisions on these two topics should the city council decide, or should they go to the voters? Okay, so that's going to kind of be the theme I want you to keep in mind. When we get to Prop A, I'm going to ask if you'll hold your questions or comments till the end, and then we'll be able to go over those. And you can see my photo in the background. This is colloquially known as the soccer proposition. All right. So this proposition, if it's passed, is going to turn into a law. And so the way they write the proposition language is very legalese, if you will. And so to me, it's kind of difficult. So I have opted to break up just by bullet points so that we can kind of talk through it, because if I read it to you all at once, I'm going to lose myself. So, shall a city ordinance be adopted? In other words, this is going to become a law if it passes. That requires that a sale, lease, conveyance, this means transferring property from one entity to another, mortgage or other alienation of city-owned land. Alienation is another legal term that means transferring property. For any existing or future youth, recreational, or professional sports facility, or any existing or future entertainment facility, so sports and entertainment venues, be approved by a supermajority vote of council, that means 9 of the 11 members, and also be approved by the voters at an election for which the city must pay. So this is the first part of the proposition, which says, if we are, just part one. If you're going to do something with city land that involves sports or entertainment facilities, like lease it, sell it, transfer it, it's got to go to a vote and be approved by a supermajority of council. The second part of the same proposition requires that site development permits and variances are like zoning changes, thereto be approved by the voters at an election for which the city must pay if the sale, lease, conveyance, mortgage, or other alienation of the city-owned land for this facility has not already obtained voter approval. In other words, if we haven't voted on it and they want a zoning change or a site development permit, we got to vote on it and get a supermajority of council. The third part requires that the facility post payment and performance bonds. A construction company is going to take many years to build one of these venues, so they make you put bonds up before they'll start building. That's what it's talking about there. and pay ad valorem taxes, property taxes, or payments equal to the amount of ad valorem taxes, so that could be like rent instead of property taxes, and requires that all information concerning such sale, lease, conveyance, mortgage, or other alienation shall be disclosed to the public. Simple, right? Okay, we're going to circle back around, but that's the language of the bond. How did we get here? Why are we voting on this? Well, in 2018, the Austin City Council approved a lease contract with a Major League Soccer franchise owner to build a stadium on city-owned land in North Austin at Michaela Place. The deal says that for 5 years, the rent will be $1, and then after that, it will raise to more than $500,000 for 20 years. In exchange for this deal, the owner will build the stadium at no cost to the city and will not pay property tax. And there were some people that disliked that deal. And there was a group called the Friends of Michaela Place. This is neighborhood organizations near where the soccer stadium is going to be built that formed an organization and started a petition. And there was also Fair Play Austin, which is a PAC that was mostly run by, at least financially, by Bobby Epstein, who's the chairman of the Circuit of the Americas, which is home to another soccer team. So that's interesting. They worked together, and they did get more than 20,000 signatures. And when you get more than 20,000 signatures, that means you got enough. They were validated. It goes to the city council. The city council can say, okay, we'll take your plan, or they can say, we're taking it to a vote. Of course, the city council liked the soccer stadium deal. They signed it. So that is why you are voting on it in November. So you might have noticed that that was kind of a bugbear to that proposition. So you say potato. The people who initiated this proposition, they said, we don't like the wording that the city ended up putting on the ballot because you said youth sports facility, and we're only talking about big stadiums for major league events. And the city said, it doesn't matter, because if you say sports venues, that could legally be taken to mean youth sports venues. And so they went to court to fight over the ballot language. And the Texas Third Court of Appeals okayed the ballot language, said Austin had fine ballot language on this proposition. Then one of the PACs that was supporting this pulled out and said, well, under the language in this, I feel like, or we feel like, it's going to do more harm than good, so we're no longer supporting Proposition A. Friends of Michaela Place, the neighborhood organization, is still supporting it though. Now, the big question is, if Prop A passes, would this stop the soccer stadium from being built? And the answer is most likely no. However, the courts would decide that. The reason it's most likely no is because the deal's been inked and construction has started. So all of those bonds put forward, they've already been okayed. So this probably would not overturn the soccer deal. It would only look at future deals, or it could affect the lease agreement in 25 years for the soccer stadium. This is really important because people are going to go into the proposition thinking, if I vote on this like this, the soccer stadium won't get built. And again, we can't be 100% sure because it'll probably go to court, but it's very much looking like it won't affect that. Now, what are supporters of Prop A saying? And I always have to remind myself, if you're a supporter, that means you want an election for new facilities. Taxpayers should not be subsidizing a private enterprise like a MLS soccer stadium. The city council should not pick winners and losers. They shouldn't pick one soccer group over another. Neighborhoods should have a direct say through an election when a venue is being considered. And a quote from someone with the Friends of Michaela Place, we still believe that citizens should have a right to vote on how to use public lands and public monies. What are opponents of Prop A saying? This is people who don't want these decisions to go to a vote. They want council to make these decisions. This would create significant bureaucratic difficulties and hamstring the council when it comes to signing contracts. The one that's been in the news the most is the passage may trigger elections anytime you want a new youth or sports facility on city-owned land. And it could mean that longtime city-owned properties that are leased to places like the Long Center and the Zach Theater, they could have to start paying property taxes. And in fact, the Long Center and different public theaters and things came out firmly against Prop A. They were saying they'd be on the hook for $3 million a year. They're nonprofits, they can't afford this, okay? Opponents include Mayor Steve Adler and Councilmember Greg Caesar, who argue Prop A is on the ballot because the owners of the Circuit of the Americas and the other soccer team did not want a second professional soccer team, so that it was a little personal. So, to sum up, if you vote yes on this, that means you want at least 9 city council members to approve, and you want it to go to a vote, and you want automatically to have to pay property tax. No exemptions for things like the Long Center or anything like that. If you vote no, it means you want the status quo, which means a majority vote of council can approve all these different permits for a sports or entertainment venue, and they have the ability to negotiate on tax. They can charge it or not, depending on that particular lease. So, does anybody have an easy question?
Have part A and not part B?
Yeah, no, that is the big question, right? Like, what people wanted on the ballot wasn't this initially. They wanted something different. That didn't make it on the ballot. So you got to make sure you're thinking about what's on the ballot, not what you wish was on the ballot. Yes?
Yeah, so it seemed in my ear as though there were things that you read and explained, one canceling the other.
Oh, tell me which one, what
I
part?
have no idea.
So on the pros and cons, later on I'll show you, there's a direct one, because I'm kind of taking that from the people who are saying this and that. So they may actually, disagree on what the
this
deal is.
information be available on Common Ground's website?
Yes, I will have the PDF of the PowerPoint, so.
And we're videotaping.
Oh, good. You didn't tell me that. Yes.
You mentioned like some of the people that were against it. Who are some of the people that are for it?
Friends of Michaela Place. They are the main group that's still for it. And like I said, they're a pack of neighborhood associations kind of from the North Austin area. Basically, the soccer stadium's getting built in their neighborhood. So that's why they're the ones that initiated the petition. Okay. Yes.
Hi, my name is Mark. Full disclosure, I'm helping out the campaign against.
Yes.
There's some information back here if you want to grab some on your way out. It's actually 10 out of 11 council members are against this. Majority of the AISD, school board, county commissioners, a lot of folks who do business on city land and who are afraid of the negative consequences of this. I actually like petitions. Petitions have done a lot of good work in the city in the past, SOS or 10-1. And if you look at her very first slide about what Prop A is, if it just stopped there, should we have an election next time we want to convey or lease or sell city land for sports entertainment? If it had stopped right there, I think everyone would have said, sure, why not? That sounds pretty good. It's everything after that causes a problem. It would impact these folks starting next year if Prop A passes.
All right. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on. In the sake of time, you can come find me after if you have any more questions. So, Prop B, and if you thought that one was dramatic, shall an ordinance be adopted? We're going to make this a law that prioritizes the use of Austin's hotel occupancy tax revenue. This is a tax if you stay at a hotel in Austin, it gets added to your bill. By continuing the city practice to spend 15% of the occupancy tax on cultural arts and 15% on historic preservation. So this already happens, they just want to codify it in law. Limiting the city's spending to construct, operate, maintain, or promote the Austin Convention Center to 34% of the revenue. So they couldn't use more than 34%. And requiring all remaining hotel occupancy tax revenue to support and enhance Austin's cultural tourism industry to the potential exclusion of other allowable uses under the tax code. And and requires the city to obtain voter approval and public oversight for convention center improvement and expansion costing more than $20 million. Okay, so there's two things in this. One is it would specify how hotel occupancy tax can be spent, listed up here. And the second thing is, if there was more than $20 million in expansion on the convention center or renovations, it has to go to a vote. Now, how did we get here? Well, at the beginning of the summer, the City Council voted for a $1.2 billion expansion to the convention center. And the convention center is currently supported by the hotel tax, which we estimate generates around $102 million a year. And there were people that did not like that this expansion was voted on in the council, and a PAC came together called Unconventional Austin, which was mainly funded by, let me make sure I'm getting, Save Our Springs Alliance, Bill Bunch, and it brought together other groups of people, and they did get more than 20,000 signatures. This went to the city council, and they said, we're not going to say yes to this, so it's got to go on the ballot. But it got dramatic. You say tomato. The initial language on the ballot was long and convoluted, and the local NAAC president, Nelson Linder, sued the city of Austin over the ballot language. He took issue with two major things. The original language talked a lot about elections costing a lot of money, and they felt like that wasn't quite neutral. And it also didn't tell everybody exactly how the hotel occupancy tax would be divided up. And on this case, the appeals court struck down the language and made Austin rewrite it. So what we went over was the rewritten language, okay? And you can even kind of tell it's a little simpler than some of our other propositions, at least language-wise. So, the best thing about this proposition is there have been so many great puns in the newspapers because hotel occupancy tax is called a hot tax, and I've seen it's a hot mess, it's hot in here, all kinds of stuff. We can thank everybody for that. Okay, there is a legal argument that is very in the weeds. The city says they can only put a huge chunk of the hotel occupancy tax toward the convention center. And so even if this did pass, they don't have a choice according to state law. The proponents, the people supporting Prop B, say, no, we've got our attorneys over here saying you absolutely can divide it up. And so if you're asking me if you can or you cannot, I don't know. It looks totally split, and if this passes, it'll almost certainly go to the courts and they'll decide. So there's been a lot of writing about this. It's really complicated, and the answer is, I don't know. So, but I did want to point it out. Would this stop the convention center from being expanded? So we asked this question about the soccer stadium. This answer is maybe. It's a little bit different than the soccer stadium because the city itself is expanding the convention center. So it could stop it, it could not. This is another thing that if this proposition passes, will probably go to court. Okay? What are supporters of Prop B saying? And again, to remind myself, if you're a supporter of Prop B, you are supporting an election for convention center expansion. The hotel occupancy tax should be spent on broader initiatives throughout the city. Historic Palm Elementary School, which is right next to the convention center, could be threatened by this expansion. Note that one, because you're going to see a similar argument on the opponents of Prop B too. So, and then this quote, I wanted to say, I took directly from Unconventional Austin's webpage, okay? I need to put marks on there. Requires transparency in how public dollars are spent by the multinational hotels who run Visit Austin, the convention center's marketing arm. Okay. So that's a direct quote, because adding in multinational, it's not super neutral, but that is what supporters are saying. Here's the quote. I think it's important as citizens in this city for an issue of this magnitude and nature to have the support of voters, Linder told the Statesman. This is the president of the NAACP. The city of Austin is not being responsible by doing these big projects without getting the approval of voters. You can't just ignore people and spend that kind of money. So So we talked about how there was a PAC supporting this, but there are a lot of groups supporting this, including ones like the NAACP. Now, what are opponents of Prop B saying? This is people who don't want this to trigger an election every time, who want the council to make this decision. This would trigger costly elections instead of allowing the council to decide. Historic Palm Elementary School could be saved by the expansion. So, different arguments there. The expansion of the convention center would offer big benefits to Austin. And there is a political action committee that is against Prop B. It's called FAM. The expansion will provide access to $300 million in community benefits via both a 2% HOT increase, hotel occupancy tax, and the related tourism public improvement district agreement between the city and the downtown hotels. In other words, expansion of the convention center will be good for our bottom line in our city. Okay? So to sum up, if you vote yes on Prop B, that means you want an election to approve any convention center expansion that costs more than $20 million, and you want the hot tax divided up as listed in the ballot with no more than 34% going to the convention center. If you vote no, it means you want the status quo with council deciding for a convention center expansion and the current division of the hotel occupancy taxes. Or the council could change it, but in other words, it would be changed by council, not by this proposition, okay? Prop B. This was one thing I wanted to pick up. I didn't say either one of these statements. Let me say that real fast. So both of these were citizen-initiated petitions, and there's been some interesting discussion in the news about, do we overuse those? Do we underuse those? And so I thought that was another little nugget for you all to think about. Some people called them citizen-initiated petitions for good governance and oversight. And a writer for the Austin Chronicle called them forced elections by a handful of people, okay? So on one side, the council does something you don't like, you want a way, not just you and 20,000 other people, want a way to put it on the ballot to vote on it. Or there is some concern that a PAC or someone with a lot of money could say, I don't like this law in Austin. This is kind of similar to what happened with Uber and Lyft. And I'm going to pay people to go out and get signatures. You can't pay for the signature, but you can pay signature getters. And I'm going to just put this up in a small election so I don't have to follow this law. Obviously, those are two extreme versions, and neither of these petitions really fit there, but it's something to think about. Do you think all these citizen-initiated petitions are good on big projects, or would you like to pull back? So that's something else to think about when you vote. Now, there's one more, not in the city, a Travis County Proposition A. And this one is going to seem so simple until it's not. We're not going to have any simple ones today, okay? So, this one was proposed by the commissioners. It was not citizens, okay? Authorizing Travis County, Texas to provide, everywhere in the county, planning, acquisition, establishment, development, construction, renovation, and financing of new and existing facilities of the type described by Section 334.001 4A of the Texas Local Government Code. I looked that up for you, so you know. That is a definition that says venue, in this case, means an arena, coliseum, stadium, or other type of area or facility, right? Including a multi-purpose arena and adjacent support facilities, and any related infrastructure in the area of the Travis County Exposition Center. So that's what we're talking about. And designated by a resolution of the Commissioners Court of the county adopted July 30th as a sports and community venue project within the county in accordance with applicable law. This means the commissioners decide to put this on the ballot. That's all that means. It's just complicated. And to impose a new hotel occupancy tax, welcome back, yes, on the occupancy of a room in a hotel located within the county at a rate not to exceed 2% of the price paid for the room. And if approved, the maximum hotel occupancy tax rate imposed from all sources in the county would be 17% of the price paid for a room in a hotel for the purpose of financing the venue project and approving the resolution. This one's wordy, but it's simple. They want a 2% hotel occupancy tax, and they want that money to go to the Travis County Exposition Center. Okay? Easy, right? Where will the money go? This is a quote from Curbed Austin. 1.3 million square foot. This is a suggestion, like, so they would have a little room to play with this, but sports and entertainment complex, basically like they're going to redo the Travis County Exposition Center. The vision includes the creation of the East Austin District with multi-purpose buildings for restaurants, retail, 28,000 square feet of youth facilities around the perimeter of the area, and a stadium, okay? This right here, the county's not saying they're going to do exactly this. This is one of the plans that was submitted for the money, okay? But wait a second. They said only 17% could go to hot taxes. That's a state law. You cannot charge more than 17% in hotel occupancy tax, okay? So that's the limit. But something is a-brewing. Now, we're only talking about places within the city limits that are in Travis County. So if you're outside the city limits, but still in Travis County, if this passes, you'll be paying 2% hotel occupancy tax. But what if you're in the city of Austin and Travis County and you're a hotel, okay? Well, Austin has 9% hotel occupancy tax, a 2% venue tax. This was like similar to a bond election. We voted on this in 1998 to renovate the convention center, and 6% levied by the state. In other words, if you're a hotel in the city of Austin, you're already at your max, okay? So how can the county get 2%? They can't right now. But that venue tax is going to be paid off somewhere between 2021 and 2029. The county wants the city, who's on track to pay it off by 2021, so they can start getting that money. And the city hasn't said no to that, but they haven't said yes. And there's some question that they may be dragging their feet and maybe paying a little slower to keep that tax till 2029. That is, who knows what will happen. But you've probably seen the county judge went and testified in front of the city council. There's been some rigmarole between them. So if Travis County passes, what will happen? The answer is probably some politics. Remember how we talked about Palm School? And the county owns Palm School, not the city. The city needs it for expansion, so maybe they'll say something like, well, we could, you give us 1%, we give you, I don't know, there's going to be some kind of negotiation. But in other words, when this passes, it's not done. You're going to see some politics in the paper about it. So what are supporters of Prop A, people who support the increase in the hot tax for Travis County and the expansion of the exposition, saying? This is going to funnel money to underdeveloped parts of Austin. This is in the northeast. If you've been out to the exposition center, there's not a lot around it. There's not a lot of facilities around it. And so this is going to include parks and hopefully offer some redevelopment. The exposition center is overdue for renovation. There's some safety issues they need to upgrade and things like that. And this will cost the county no money, because the hotel occupancy tax, our visitors coming in will pay for it. One of the big proponents of this is Rodeo Austin, who uses the exposition center for the rodeo. They're eager for a public-private partnership to pull off the plan, which nicely complements the city's own recent released long-term plan for the adjacent Walter E. Long Park. So lots of development in the northeast part. What are opponents of Prop B saying? I could not find a lot of information on people very actively opposing Prop B, except for this first bullet point, which is who's going to get this occupancy tax that we talked about, and if it's not the county, how are you going to pay for that expansion? Okay, so just a little worried about the process. These other two I came up with, again, just trying to be neutral as possible. There are a lot of people that feel like we shouldn't expand things like exposition centers, okay? And there are some people that are against any kind of increase in any kind of tax. So this would be an increase in a hotel occupancy tax. So again, these last two are not ones people are saying, they're just general ones for you to wrap your head around it. So to sum up, a yes vote means you want the hot tax to increase by 2%, but no more than 17%. for hotels in the county and use that money for an expansion of the Expo Center. And a no vote means you do not want it to increase and you do not want an expansion of the Expo Center, or at least not paid for like that. Okay? Yeah. All right, and then you're gonna vote on, we'll see like the real exciting part that happens. To sum up, I just wanted to say thank you to everyone. And if you are really interested in getting into the weeds on these issues and learning how to take really complicated things and in civic education, please join us, the League of Women Voters Advocacy Committee. I have a little spiel. Do you love bonding over bonds? We would love to have you there. So thank you very much.
And we will have those slides again, and we are videotaping. So the next 40 minutes or so will be devoted to the process of the ballot, of the election itself. And Dana DeBeauvoir has kindly accepted an invitation to come yet again, right? We've had her come talk about what we hope the new system would look like. Well, now we have the new system. And so
be sure to have your photo ID ready when you check in. Once the poll worker finds you on the list of registered voters, they will flip over the tablet, asking you to confirm your information and sign the screen. You will then be handed a ballot card. Now, you're ready to vote. Take your ballot card to an available voting booth and insert it into the slot of the new touchscreen ballot marking device in the voting booth. Make your selections on the touchscreen. You can easily review your choices as you go and on the final screen of the ballot marking device. Make changes by touching the options labeled Next and Previous. The voting system is fully accessible. Any voter can use it. Each booth includes an audio ballot and keypad. It's designed for everyone. Once you've made your selections on the touchscreen, print your voted ballot card by tapping the Print Card option. Your printed ballot card will be returned to you from the same slot on the front of the ballot marking device. As a Travis County voter, you'll have a new job when you go to vote, verifying your selections on the ballot card. Step away from the voting booth with your ballot card and review your selections. If you want to change the selection you made, simply bring the ballot card back to the check-in table. A poll worker will spoil that ballot card and give you a new one to start over. Once you're satisfied with your selections, take your ballot card to the digital scanner at the ballot box. The display screen at the ballot box will provide instructions on how to insert your ballot into the scanner. Once inserted, the display screen will notify you that your ballot has been successfully cast. Finally, don't forget your I voted sticker.
That's a really good overview of what you're going to see once you show up at either early voting or vote centers on election day. So a couple of remarks, and then what I'd like to do is throw it open to questions, because I'm sure you probably have a lot of questions about this. All right, so you have been asking for a paper trail voting system for years, and we finally have a manufacturer that built one for us. It's federally and state certified, and it is here. And it's my obligation to try to reach as many of the 800,000 registered voters in Travis County as possible in time for this first election so that everybody's comfortable and they know exactly how to use it. Our first time to go vote, we are in phase 1 to get us through this November election, and then we will start phase 2, yet another outreach for our training program. Phase 2 will cover the primary and the presidential November 2020 election. So this is going to be a more than year-long process for getting everybody up to speed and comfortable with the new voting system. All right, now here's what I would describe as the key points that are different about this new paper trail system versus the old e-slate system that we've all had for 18 years. Many of our voters don't know any other kind of system. This is the ballot marking device you saw, the box where you put your paper trail in and then get it back out, comes from the Americans with Disability Act community. So it is an ADA device. It doesn't have any, yeah, it's really good. And we're all going to vote on the same device. We don't have a situation here in Travis County where, you know, those of us who are considered able-bodied vote one way, and then for our voters with, our people with disabilities, they have something over in the corner and it's some kind of separate but equal, and maybe it gets set up right, maybe it doesn't. I have never respected that way of dealing with voting. Some communities do it that way. We've never done it that way in Travis County, and our new voting system has everybody voting exactly the same. So no matter your level of ability or disability, we're all together in this. The box that you see, though, is not a computer, whereas your e-slate was a computer. This is not a computer. It has no memory. It's also not a printer. It doesn't have any toner or ink in it, so there's nothing to run out. It doesn't have any kind of paper supply. You're holding the ballot card. That's the only paper supply there is. When you get your ballot card, it will have at the top a barcode across the top of it. That barcode is your ballot format. That's the ballot that fits your neighborhood. And so when you put the ballot card in the ballot marking device, it's reading from that barcode what ballot it's going to pull up. So the only instructions that are resident in this machine is what's on the the barcode you just put in. Likewise, when you do pull your ballot card out, there's nothing left in there. There's no memory, there's no nothing. That's why we tell everybody it's okay once you pull your paper trail out of the marker, you can step away from it, let the next voter come up, because there's nothing left in there for you at all. And then you're going to walk towards the ballot box to put your ballot in the ballot box, so that that the other voters can proceed behind you. But you're going to make sure that what's on your paper trail is what you want. Now here's a couple of pieces of information for you. There are a couple things. First of all, we have not asked you to do any kind of side-by-side comparison with the screen that you're going to see with all your choices on it and your paper trail, for a couple of reasons. First of all, if we had a system like that, then you would have to have some kind of memory in the marking device that held on to your ballot, because you've already pulled out your paper trail in order, and it would be a computer, and that defeats the security of what we're trying to go to here. So once you've pulled your ballot out, there isn't anything for you to compare side by side. The second reason that we don't want to have side-by-side comparison is because years and years of research shows that human beings are really not very good at side-by-side comparison. And I'll give you the example. If you've ever worked those little puzzles, the pictures in the newspaper that say, find the 7 things different between these 2 pictures, and it takes you forever to find this. Okay, well, we can't have that in the polling place. And besides, it's like people get tired of it and they'll just look on. So what we're asking you to do is take a look at at your paper trail. Is it what you like? Brains are very quick to say, yes, those are mine. Or they're also very quick to say, oops, I missed somebody, or, well, I didn't intend to do that. Who made that mistake? And it's really easy to go back to the first table and say, I want a do-over. It's no big deal. In Texas, you get 3 ballots. Please be very careful you don't mess up that 3rd ballot. When you are headed to the ballot box, though, there's a couple other things to be thinking about. It's so incredibly crucial in this paper-driven, voter-verified new ballot voting system that we have that you voter verify your ballot. Everything depends on you making sure it's correct. Now, one of the things that is said, and I want you to take this with a grain of salt from me, everything that is said about these new kinds of voting systems that require a voter participation is that they are said, oh, well, these won't work because voters won't verify their ballot. Really? I think I can trust you guys. I think you will take it seriously and you'll voter verify your ballot. I think we've been through enough problems over the years with needing to have a verifiable ballot that you guys are going to handle it just fine and prove those naysayers wrong. But by all means, do pay special attention to this. It's a brand new job we're asking you to do, so I want you to take it really very seriously. So, okay.
What happens to the paper?
Okay, I'm going to cover all that. Give me a
In
second.
other words, is there a shredding machine?
No. She wants to know if the paper ballots get shredded. Well, a couple of years later they do. So let me walk it through. Let me walk it through for you. All right. So back to you're holding your ballot in your hand and you voter verified it. Okay. One of the other things you cannot do, and please tell your children and your grandchildren, that you can't hold it up and take a selfie for your grandchildren or mom. Don't do that in the polling place. It is illegal to pull out your phone and take a picture of anybody or anything inside the polling place. Millennials have a really hard time understanding it. They just don't get it. And the purpose of the ban on any kind of electronic equipment inside the polling place is not to irritate you. It's to make sure that your neighbor knows that they feel comfortable in the safe haven of the polling place, that they're not being recorded or photographed against their will. It's not about you, it's about the other person. All right? So if you see somebody pull a phone out in a polling place, it is entirely within your purview to say, you can't do that here. You can be nice about it. They're doing it because they don't know. But it's also up to all of us to say, you know what, we are all entitled to a safe haven when we vote. And it's just, we're going to have to share the word that, especially for our new voters, we don't do that here. Okay, you have my permission to help everybody get the word out. Okay, so now back to your question about how we manage to take care of paper trails and then what happens to them after that. You saw the voter walk over to the ballot box and put her paper trail, her ballot card in. All right, when it goes into the ballot box, at that point in time, an electronic copy is made from the paper. That's one of the things I love about this system. The first time you introduce any electronics, it comes from the paper. And at that point in time, both of them go into the ballot box. The paper trail goes into the bottom in a traditional, old-fashioned, locked ballot box that just stays, right there, and you bring it in just like you would any other ballot box at the end of either early voting or election night. The electronic copy is in a locked container on the ballot box that's a removable medium. There are actually two. One of them is intended to be removed and pulled out for us to count ballots on election night so that we can use electronics for fast and accurate results. Now, we keep the two of these together at all times. So either law enforcement or the two-party representative process that we use brings both the ballots and the electronic copy of it into the counting station, and we make official surrender there. Both of those then are brought in. We preserve the ballots for, and I'll talk about what the next step is in just a minute on that, for the time being, and then we use the electronics for distribution of results. The way it works is that electronic media gets plugged into a scanner, a card reader is what it's like. Very low tech. There's nothing really bleeding edge about anything in elections. We always go a step down in technology. So we put it into the reader. It then tallies. The ballot box doesn't tally anything. It doesn't add anything up. It's also kind of a dumb box as well. Nothing happens in terms of, it just stores each individual ballot, one by one, so that we have a batch. It's like taking a whole stack of ballots. So when we get to the counting station, that removable media is put into a reader, and it accumulates and tallies all of the races for all the offices and gives you the total for that vote center or for that early voting location. And they're accumulated in that way. Then you're probably wondering, well, how does it get on the internet then on election night? And the answer to that is we pull out periodically a copy that's a cumulative copy of everything that the scanner has pulled together. And we walk it across the room, air-gapped, and we plug it in physically into a separate machine that is attached to the internet, and that's what sends it out to all the media, all the Travis County and city, and all the other partners that they are working with, depending on the election, everybody that wants information. That's how it gets distributed out on election night. And we usually do 6 or 7 updates during the night so that we can make sure everybody knows what's going on. We try to do early voting results right at 7 p.m. so that everybody can know what happened during early voting. And we try very hard to have election results substantially complete by the 10 p.m. news broadcast, so that by the time you're ready to go to bed on election night, you pretty much know who won, who didn't win, and who's still in a close contest. All right, now we're going to talk now about the paper ballot part of it. The paper trail is really incredibly important. And one of the things that we want to do is we want to actually use it. This is a hard copy, auditable artifact. So during election night, we're going to gather these together and keep them, because we're starting a new process that's called risk limiting audits. It's a brand new audit. It hasn't been invented for Texas yet, but that's what Travis County is going to do. We're working with the Secretary of State's office for a county-based risk limiting audit process. We'll be documenting, writing up all the procedures, everything that we need to do to figure out how to do this. The idea is that by race, we'll go in and we'll pull out a sampling of the ballots, a random sampling of the ballots, sufficient to be able to take care of a variety of situations at the 95% confidence level. If you've got a race where you have two candidates and one of them won by a big margin, then you're only going to need to pull out a smaller sample of ballots to compare to the electronic copy to see that they match up, to prove the integrity of the election, that it was all correct. If you've got a very close race where the candidates one barely won out over the other, then you're going to have to pull a much larger statistical sample to do the comparison, so that you know the electronic, the electronic copy matched the paper copy. Then once we've got all that done, we look, and the whole goal is to finish risk limiting audits before you go to canvass. That's the whole plan. Once we've finished sort of inventing a local version of risk limiting audits and giving our documentation and our best practices to the Secretary of State's office, their plan is to turn around and distribute it to the other 90 counties in Texas that have also purchased Express Vote, so that they can begin using it for risk limiting audits in their counties as well. So the idea is we're going to be the guinea pig. I feel like we've got pretty good legs to stand on to be able to offer our help, and I'm pleased to be able to work with the Secretary of State to do this. Okay, now, the printer on which this card, this is archival thermal printer paper. So it's not like the cash register tape that you get, you put it in your wallet and then you take it out and it's like it's vanished. This is archival, but the idea is in the machine, the machine is heavy because it's this a little heater that's in there. And so it presses heat on this ballot card and it turns the paper dark. So that's actually what the print is. These are archival, though. They're intended to last longer than the federal requirement for 22 months retention schedule for keeping those ballots. So after we have finished using them to verify the vote totals, sometime in the process after election night and before canvass, Then we want to keep them bound up and in their proper order so that we can go back and double check risk limiting audits. We keep them for 22 months and then they go to be shredded. And we also, when we're in the midst of election, just to verify that nothing has changed about how we do our checks and balances for election night. We are still comparing number of signatures to the number of ballots cast, reconciling the number of provisional ballots, spoil ballots, and then of course we also account for the number of unvoted ballots as well. The whole thing needs to come back in and add back up to what was originally distributed out into the field. And we want that to all add back up perfectly. The idea is that we don't want to count a vote center twice. We have protections for that. We don't want to miss a set of ballots in the ballot box. Maybe they got stuck in a corner. We don't want to miss anything like that. So we verify all the time, constantly, all through the night. Okay. I think let me stop there. Because that's probably going to trigger enough questions for y'all. So let me go ahead and start with questions. Yes, ma'am, in the pink, and then we'll come back to you.
Okay, I want to first thank you. I know you worked long and hard on this. And my question is this thing that you showed somewhere where it can post it?
The video?
The video. Oh, yes, ma'am. We're doing a ton of demonstrations and video explanations, and you can find them on votetravis.com.
Okay.
And we're also, the video is online too. We just barely got this up and running as of like yesterday.
Association site.
Yes, County Clerk. If you look at County Clerk, you can see where we're traveling around and doing them. As well as the opportunity to see all of our educational materials that tell you 1, 2, 3, 4. First, you're going to check in, then you're going to make your selections, then you're going to verify your ballot, then you're going to vote, then you're going to get your I voted sticker. So all of that is available, and keep in mind that this is just phase 1. You're going to keep hearing about this and hearing about this for the next year. Okay, yes, ma'am, in the back.
Let me make this interject. We will also have links on our website.
Yes.
And we also have a video. So the links on the website will be a paragraph. There'll be a paragraph explanation of what we did today with links to these 2 documents as well as the video.
Thank you. Great. Thank you, Joanne. We're also in the process of training our election workers and our ambassadors who are also going to be helping me come out and share the video with other folks too. So by the time we get through these first few months here, there will be more than just me to travel around and teach everybody how to do this. And don't let me go over my time because I know we can talk a lot. Okay, yes ma'am.
My question was same as just asked.
Oh, okay. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Well, maybe you said this already here, I can see it on the video. But once the ballot comes back to you, and you look at it, and I didn't need to do that, what do you do then?
Okay, you take your ballot card, you want a do-over. You take your ballot card back to the first table you stopped at, the qualification table, and you say, I want a do-over. They're going to take that card from you, they're going to spoil it. They're going to make it so that nobody can vote again, right? And that's the standard law for any paper ballot. It's old law. They're going to take it from you, and they're going to give you a fresh ballot card, and you're going to go back to the ballot marking device, start all over again, vote it, and just proceed right on through. And no, we don't make you go back to the end of the line. But yeah, it's just a do-over. Okay. And we keep track of those spoiled ballots too. They're part of the reconciliation. Yes, ma'am?
Is it possible that the ballot, the paper ballot, doesn't match what you put on the machine?
Well, as Spock says, there are always possibilities. Here's how that extremist a thing might happen. You would have to get into a certain segment of the vendor's not software, but database.
No, I wasn't thinking of that. I was thinking of enough people. they hit buttons and then they hit a different button and then change
Oh, well,
things.
but see, you can go back and change it while you're in the middle of it, and, so
So
it
it's not possible to vote twice for the same office.
oh, no, you're prevented from doing
You're
that.
prevented
Yeah,
from
won't
doing that.
let you do that, and it will tell you if you undervote.
And it will tell you if you have not marked something?
Yes, undervote, yeah. It'll tell you all that on a summary screen, so it'll warn you. In fact, when we do demonstrations, there's one little trick question in there that we like to show our demo voters. There's actually one in there that says you can vote for 2 items, and almost nobody catches it. They'll just vote for one, so when they get to their summary screen, it says, you missed one, you undervoted. So we teach people that, they can do back and forth and correct it and change their minds all they want. So you can, just take your time and do whatever you want with it. And then if you still made a mistake or you still didn't get quite what you wanted, you can ask for a redo. Okay, yes, ma'am.
Please refresh my memory. Usually when I go in, I already know how I want to vote.
Yeah.
But are people still allowed to bring in materials?
Right.
And so when you were talking about the phone, that reminded me, so if someone wants to use the phone to remind them, it's not allowed.
Yeah, no. Okay, so please bring in your written materials. Bring in your notes, you can even bring in your own candidate materials.
No phones.
No, yeah, but it's not, oh, well, it's okay because it's where I have my candidate notes. I actually had a young man tell me that one time. It's like, what part of no cell phone did you not get?
But as an election judge, what I do is I have a stack of paper, and I say, take a piece of paper, go outside, look at your phone, here's a pencil, write it down, then come on in and we'll save your place.
Yeah, right.
But no phones regardless.
No phones, not, because once again, how does she know that you're taping her?
Right.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
Back to the ADA stuff.
Yes.
Okay, I agree with you. Sending people, it always bothered me.
Yeah.
But at the same time, how are the ADA, especially the blind folks, supposed to voter check their ballot?
Okay. That's easy. All right, they have choices. All right. The easiest choice is for them to take their ballot card, put it right back into the machine, put on the headphones, and have the machine read their ballot back to them. Because it's going to read it to them. You can even blank out the screen. If you can't see the screen, why should anybody else see it either? So you can blank out the screen, listen to it, and with that box, you saw the guy with the box, you can navigate through the ballot and make your choices using the tactile buttons. And those who have used these systems are really fast with them. They know what they're doing. So you make all your choices, and then you print out your ballot card using the tactile buttons. Once you've got it back out, then you just put it right back in. Now, if you want to, if you are suspicious of doing everything on one machine, you can step to another machine, put your ballot card in that machine, and it'll do the exact same thing. It will read whatever's on that ballot card based on the text and the human readable text that's on the card. So they get it because it's read back with audio phones. You can speed them up, you can slow them down. They're in English and in Spanish. I think it's going to work out well. Yes, sir.
So, if you want to do a do-over, this is the point. You've gotten your ballot. You look at it and you want to do a do-over. It has not gone into the final.
Correct. Yeah. Don't put it in the ballot box unless you're ready.
Right. So it's not. There's no need to reconcile that. You just take it back and they scrap it and give you another ballot.
Right. Right. Those are accounted for later.
Yeah.
Now, you remember that in 2020, there's no straight ticket voting.
Yeah.
And the longest ballot is, what, 19 inches?
Yeah. Yeah, we have some adjustments we can make. There's 14, 17, and 19 inches long, just to start with. And then, we'll be wrapping them around us. And we have different sizes of fonts. And if we ever do get to the ballot length or ballot card length we have right now, should be able to take pretty much any ballot we've got. So we have room to grow. And keep in mind, it's only going to print your choices. It's not going to try to reproduce the whole ballot. So if we have to go to a larger size, and if we really have that big a ballot, we can also adjust font size. If we have to get down to a smaller font size, keep in mind 2 things. One of them is you can verify with larger print because you can adjust it on the machine to blow it up bigger. You can do it there too, in addition to your ballot card. We'll have magnifiers if we ever get into a situation where the print is tiny on the cards. We try to keep it as big as possible. So that you'll have that kind of assistance should we get into that, that kind of a problem. Yes, ma'am, and then we're going to come back to you right here.
The fact that we're not going to have the straight ticket.
Yeah, we will not have straight ticket come next November.
Which was a quicker thing than if you're going to go through that wrong. Are we allowing for more machines?
Yes.
Or more time?
Yeah.
To accommodate?
More machines, and people have asked us for more vote centers, so we have those too. And one of the things, especially since I'm happy to say, it seems like more people are wanting to vote these days, and I'm thrilled with that. So we also are doing, for these next few elections, instead of just having 2 mega centers in the county, we're going to have 4 mega centers. And mega centers are gigantic places that have about 30 to 40 voting booths and scads of parking and lots of room. And so there would be 4 of those, so we've got big ones. The only thing, and I really do think we're going to be okay with the loss of straight party. What I'm more worried about is the areas, the rural areas around the county where we've lost mobile voting. Trying to get those people to come out and get voting services to them, I'm a little concerned about. We have put, as best we can afford, an additional place out east and west. But we need to get the word out to those people that, they have lost their traditional places to vote, and again, we need to pull them out to get them to vote anyway. Yes, ma'am?
I think you might have answered that my question.
You can
So
answer.
you've got demonstration kind of counties, or counties that are trying this process out, testing it out. Then you are standardizing it and putting it across the state, no matter what the poverty level is of the county, or how much money the county has for a system.
Okay, yeah, let me see if I can tease that apart a little bit. Williamson County has already purchased this same voting system. So Williamson and Travis are voting the same, and we already bought it. And in both cases, the county bought it with bonds. So it's like buying a car. We're going to pay it back over time. In both cases, all of the jurisdictions in these counties pay their fair share of it. Everybody takes a piece of it. And that's how we did with the first voting system. This is how we'll pay for this one too. So everybody pitches in.
Those are wealthy counties. Those are the counties.
Williamson and Travis.
Right. You have counties out there that don't have these funds for that type of.
Right. And it is expensive. You're right. They're so expensive. If a county can't afford it, they can't afford it. And we should be able to depend on the federal government to not act surprised that every 15 or 20 years we need a new voting system. We should have a standard, savings account and a purchasing practice where we get help all along the line from federal and state to support the locals in these purchases. And it should have been done years ago, and it's not like we don't tell them every year. Why don't you have a everybody else's budget plans for a new car every, 5 or 10 years? We should be doing the same kind of responsible planning too. Hayes County also purchased the same thing too, and their per person income is lower certainly than Williamson and Travis. They bought a little bit different one, but it's the same story. It's paper trail. They're paper-driven, voter-verified systems. So you may hear them referred to as hybrid systems too, because it's both. And oh, by the way, in terms of the security and the sort of the extra work, it is like operating 2 voting systems. The electronic voting system requires just as much attention and work as the paper part of the voting system. It's two in one. Okay, and yes, sir.
Well, 2 things. First of all, I'm intrigued by the fact that you can have the machine audibly read your ballot back to you. I usually vote a straight Austin Chronicle ticket, and it would be really helpful to be able to listen to one thing and check off the others. So I think that feature is going to be really popular, potentially with all voters, and not just those that are vision impaired.
And yeah, and I think you're right. And also this concept of who needs help and who doesn't. Varies depending on if you've had surgery, or if you've been in an accident, or, you're sick. That's all temporary, this concept of disability. It comes and goes with all of us, so.
My second point
sorry.
is that it seems like that every ballot has a unique barcode on it.
Yes.
And you're gonna save all the ballots.
Yes.
So it sounds like it would be possible to trace any given ballot all the way through the system to make sure that those votes didn't get lost along the line.
Yes, you are correct. The only thing it will not do is it will not connect to a person.
That's
It'll
fine.
it'll never go all the way back. There's a break between the voter registration part, which is about the person, and then you have an air gap when you handle your card and you walk over to the part that's about the voting.
But it sounds like there's the potential for an absolutely end-to-end audit trail.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it's referred to, end-to-end verifiability. Thank you. Okay, we're going to go right here to that.
I have a low-tech and a high-tech question. The
Okay.
low-tech one is, since I'm used to voting and it's done, and now I have to go, step 2 to make sure it counts.
Yep.
Is there going to be some way so that people don't just think they're done and wander out?
Yeah. Yes. Couple things.
They physically can't get out the door without putting their motion box.
Right, that's right. We have a trip line.
That would be common,
I tell you, there's a couple things about that. First, yes, we've made sure that while the ballot box is in your way before you can get out the door. So you're going to have to walk around the ballot box to make the exit. In most of our polling places, we've been able to set it up like that. Also, you can't get your voted sticker until you put your ballot box outside.
And there are people like me.
Yeah,
sure.
The judges
walk out.
Because it's going to take some of that. All right, and then the high-tech question, you said that throughout the election, you kind of go back and forth to give updates. You pull out-
Election night.
Yeah, I mean, election night,
Okay.
right? You pull out this card reader and you take it over here and whatnot. Does that same card reader go back?
No.
Okay.
No, in fact, it drops into a locked ballot box, never to be used
Okay,
again.
I was worried it
Yeah,
was going back and forth.
That's it. Yes, sir.
Who is the manufacturer of the system, and does it support instant runoff voting or other alternative methods?
Okay. The name of the manufacturer is ES&S Elections Systems and Software, and yes, it will support the software to run a variety of those kinds of systems. The one you mentioned is one kind, but instant runoff, I'm sorry, there are several different things.
Like approval voting, maybe?
Yes, there are several kinds, and it will support that. Okay, yes, ma'am.
One more. I've been involved in the front end of voting where people check their registration.
Yes.
And go through and sign.
Check in.
We'll be doing that. But then you get a little piece of paper at a thing where you punch in. Will those little piece of paper still be issued so that everybody knows what zone they're in?
Right. No, because the ballot card with the bar coding replaces the 4-digit code.
But how do you get the ballot card?
You're going to be given it at the check-in station. It gets printed out just like you saw here. After you finish with your signature, then you're going to get printed out a ballot card, handed to you, and
so
you
the
go
card
to...
comes right from...
Yeah. And you can go and look at it as many times as you want, look at the video. And I thought I saw one more hand.
How can you convince the fraud and the multiple, the ones who always complain that there has been more voting incorrectly?
Yeah. Well, and I feel sympathy for people who, are worried. Hey, how do you know your ballot was cast as intended and then counted as cast? Well, I don't know how much stronger we can make it. You verified it, you put it in the box, and then we check them side by side later. That's about as auditable as I know to make anything, and we've been asking for it for a long time, and it's finally here. So I think what we say to people is, I don't know how to make anything stronger than that. I really don't. I don't think it's a matter of feeling better at all. This is a hard artifact. This is real evidence, end-to-end verifiability. Yes, sir.
Are there any significant differences between this system and the one that you all were designing?
Yeah, they're a lot alike. They're a lot alike. When I saw this one, it was like, whoa, this is a lot like Starboat. Starboat has some other features to it that are improvements, and I have some good news about Starboat. For instance, Starboat had a receipt in addition to the paper trail. Starboat also was written on open source software, so the expense of these systems was greatly reduced, which was one of the reasons why I couldn't get any manufacturer to build Starboat, because there wasn't any profit in it. However, the good news about Starboat is it is being built. I know, it's really, Microsoft and the Department of Defense have gone in together using DARPA funds, if anybody knows what all that means. DARPA funds, and they are building in open source the Starboat design. They should have it ready in about 3 years, and the plan is to give that basic design to the vendor community in elections. There's not very many companies that do this. It's like 3 or 4 or 5 companies. Give it to them and let them turn it into products that they then want to turn around and sell to local governments. So this will be a huge leapfrog forward in cost control and additional security. I'm beyond happy and thrilled that we're actually going to see Starboat built sometime in my lifetime.
And I don't know whether you've mentioned one more thing about the machines, and that is that they are touch
screen.
And they're
no more buttons,
no more dials, no more.
Well, and that's because touchscreen has come a long way in 18 years. When we first had the choice, you couldn't hold calibration with those machines. They would get out of calibration within an hour, and I couldn't see us trying to stop voting and adjust it. And so we went with touch button back, 18 years ago, and it also meant that we all voted exactly the same. In this case, it's still the same. We just have a touch button pad in addition to the screen for people who need it. Yes,
Have you heard of the other Starvote system, the one that's being developed in Oregon? It's not a voting machine system. It's a way of organizing an election. It stands for Score, Then Automatic Runoff. And it's like ranked choice voting, except you don't have to rank the candidates.
My name?
Yeah. You don't have to rank the candidates, you just rate each one. Or as many as you
There
want.
are several of these schemes out there, yeah. But I didn't hear about that one. Okay.
Having a partner with the star voting machine of the DOD is really interesting, but it also makes me think that as military family, I'm wondering if this system could be available at military bases to help, since you're using the barcode to pull up the correct ballot, whether or not it might allow service members to more easily vote, because right now they have to request a ballot and wait about 3 weeks to get it, and then vote, and then make sure they return it in time.
Yeah.
It's very cumbersome.
Yeah, it depends. Okay. The in-person, voter verified, put it in the ballot box kind of voting is only good for the county you're standing in.
Yeah.
So you could be at a base, but the county you're supposed to be voting in is in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to deal with the mail. By law, that's where you're voting, so you're going to have a by-mail ballot back and forth. There isn't a way for Travis County's voting system in person to address your needs. And there are so many complications with by-mail balloting with military, and there are a lot of ideas and a lot of programs out there to try to help with that. One of the things that we can do, and that I support, is that you can email them the blank ballot so that the hard part of getting to somebody who's in the field is shortened. You could quickly get it to them. And we've been doing that for years. You can print it out, mark it up, and then send it by pouch or regular mail back to whatever state is their appropriate place to send it back in. Finding them, we can shorten that part of it. It gives them a little more time to vote. But military is just really tough.
Well, I just didn't know if that's another, besides the whole guaranteeing the vote, yay, if that was another reason why the DOD was partnering.
No,
I'm just curious.
no, it won't. That won't be that part of it. Although certainly having open source software allows us to have more flexibility about how we find bugs and and cure any possible security issues. And all of that's good for everybody.
Okay, one more question.
Okay,
Gotta
one more,
thank
all
them.
right.
I actually live in Mexico. How can I get, can you email, can I request an email
Yes.
of the ballot?
What you're going to want to do, given the new law, is in January of every year, you're going to want to send in, call in, fax in, email, a request for a ballot by mail, and you're also going to, assuming that it's every other year is a primary year, you're also going to want to request a primary ballot, so you're going to need to tell us if you want an R ballot or a D ballot. And once a year, you get on an annual list, and so you get all the ballots, everything that's going to vote for that whole year, and then the next year you sign up again and you get them all. So that's the best way to
How
handle
do
it.
I get myself on the list?
If you're not already on the annual list, then you just call us and tell us you want to be put on the annual list. Call us and get it started.
Will you make sure the phone number is listed on your site? Thank you.
Yeah, that's okay. I was gonna
Would you
run
help me thank Dana for